regular rooms, and some of these rooms have clay storage bins inside. So the clay is not being fired into a pottery vessel. It's just a sun-dried storage container, which is would be used to store wheat and keep it away from vermin. But this particular room has many of these sorts of dried clay bins. And in actual fact, we've documented these villages in areas in Bannu are still using these clay bins now. And they're used to sort of keep grain ready for use. We know that the earliest pottery that was being made by the inhabitants of Bannu in this period was actually quite distinctive. And you can see that these are quite large bowls that have quite elaborate decoration on the inside. And you can see that we have these goats with long horns, which are generally regarded as having come from the highlands of the Suliman Mountains to the west of Bannu Basin. And we have other sorts of storage jars as well. And these pottery vessels are actually probably made in baskets. They're quite simple in some respects, but they are also very nicely decorated. But the interesting thing about these pottery, and this is something that remains true over very long periods of time, is that it's distinctively used in Bannu district, in the Bannu Basin. From the earliest time that people were living in villages in Bannu, they were being distinctive in the way that they were presenting themselves. Their material culture, the sorts of things that they made and used, were distinctive and different. And that's actually something that suggests that for a very long period of time, there's been some almost like a concept of the people living in Bannu being distinctive and different to the people living in the surrounding regions. And this is something and this is where this whole concept of resistance comes from. They've actually they absorb influences from outside, but they also maintain a local ideal and identity. What is very interesting is that after these cities decline, we see the development of important centers in the borderland areas. So we see an important center appears in the Kachi Plain. We see an important center appears in the Peshawar Valley, and we see the appearance of a major center in Bannu as well. So it's very important as this sort of transition from an early period of urbanism into what happens in the periods afterwards. So in the area in the south, in the Kachi Plain, we know that there's an important site which develops, which is called Perak. Now, Perak is not a very large site. It's 9 hectares, which is actually less than 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer in size. It's probably 300 meters by 300 meters. So it's not a massive settlement, but it appears to have been occupied for about 1,000 years. And so in Bannu, we have something broadly similar. And in some ways, it's not a surprise. So what we see, this is the site called Akra. This is a major urban settlement. It's very large. You can see what remains of it on the left-hand side at the bottom. And in the 19th century, this was visited many times by administrators and travelers, and they collected material from the surface. So what you can see on the top left-hand side is some examples of small seals. This is a cylinder that was used to roll across the surface and make a stamp on the bottom. So this is an impression of the stamp on the bottom, which shows a snake. It also has a bird holding a snake on the outside. There was another little small button seal which shows a goat, and this is this is a bead that has a fish on one side and a diamond on the other side. All of these were collected from the surface of Akra, and they probably date to around 1,800 BC. So this is again suggests that Akra is probably the same age as Perak, and was then occupied for many centuries afterwards. And so just to give you an idea of where it's located, this is a map showing the location of Bannu city here and the cantonment. You can see down here at the bottom is the village of Bharat, and to the southern part of Bharat is the location of Akra. So you can see here it was being recorded on a map. Now this map was made in the early part of the 20th century, so almost 100 years ago.